Wait, what were you gonna say?
I forgot.
Oh,
I forgot, man. I mean, it
I
was
just started
just
spouting nonsense and it just left your brain.
you jumbled me, man. My brain turned to mush.
Get bamboozled.
You got me. I mean, it was probably something really funny, smart, handsome.
Witty.
I say stuff like that all the time. So
Yeah, it's
just
just another Saturday.
yeah. Oh man. All right. Welcome to the Cardinal Corner podcast, the only show where the camera quality changes every week. On today's mini episode, we'll be covering our philosophy on books, reading, and some other fun topics as well. So, Chase, why don't you get us started and kick this off?
Yeah, so I figured we'd try something new, and we're still reading our book. We're still reading Thirst at the moment. It's going great, loving it. But we're just going to talk about books. We're going to talk about why we think you should be reading books, why we love to read books. We'll talk about books as a medium in general, and kind of like why waste your time with books, because it's not actually wasting your time. That's the big secret. I'm spoiling the whole episode for you from the get-go, but why you should spend your time on books and quit wasting your time elsewhere is probably a better way to put that. And yeah, we'll just talk, because I think that I get questions from people all the time, and it makes me think about like why are we doing Cardinal Corner? What do we hope to achieve with it? And but we'll touch on some new things that we haven't talked about before. So I figured we'd just start out and talk about you and me personally. This is
Let's
the
get
gospel
personal.
of Robert and Chase right here, right? We're getting personal about why do we read books, whether we love them or hate them. Like, what do you do? Why do you read books? Tell me right now.
I will. Let's jump into it. So I wrote some notes down on the side. So if you see me looking over here, it's not a bird or
That's
anything.
cheating.
It's
This is all supposed to be off the cuff.
oh, should I close it?
Close that window right now. No, I'm
I
just kidding.
see that you're on this sheet. I see it on the
No, you can't
on the
help me
back.
like that. I didn't know I was podcast host partners with the narc.
Yeah, no one likes a narc.
That's okay. We'll forgive you.
So let me jump into it. Let me get for real here. So
Okay.
so why do I like reading books? Well, I hate it. I hate reading books. It's not fun for me. Okay. It's fun for me, but I struggle reading books. It's a really
Mhm.
difficult process for me because of my attention span and my, whatever. It's difficult. So one of the first things that I thought about when we were kind of brainstorming this question is I like learning discipline. I like developing a new form of discipline. And reading is a new form of discipline. You have to be consistent. It's a form of study. It's a form of
Mhm.
commitment. Like, I'm going to finish reading this document that's been created. And so that's one of the things that I love about it, is that I'm developing a new form of discipline, which absolutely applies in other areas of my life.
Yeah.
Just learning how to be consistent, learning to show up for myself, learning to invest in myself consistently. It's just a really valuable discipline that I love. So that's one of the reasons that I like reading.
I love that, because it's like the opposite of what most social media does to you, right? Like, I don't know. I think it's, if you could pick like the most opposite thing of a TikTok or an Instagram reel, which we do post, we try and make them valuable, but let's just take
Right.
your typical everyday meme, or your typical, even just something that's trying to teach you something. It takes a lot more discipline to read a book, and I think that that's what helps me get more out of it. Um, I was thinking about the books we've read this week, actually, and I had this idea come to mind that I really remember the books pretty well in general. And I know retention is different for everybody, but like, I still remember a lot of stuff from Why We Sleep, which was our first book, like what, almost 4 or 5 months ago now.
Yeah.
I still remember the big ideas. I don't remember all the little things, but I remember the important stuff. But then I was also thinking about how many like life hack TikToks I've seen, or like secrets, how to get the better food at a restaurant, or I don't know, all these little things. You see millions of them, it seems like. I can't even come up with an example to tell you. That's how fleeting those things are. And so for me, that's one of the things that I love about books is the stuff I learned means more and it sinks deeper and it actually like influences change in my life. I remember in the last episode we talked about the negotiation one, and I literally have used that at work 10 times since I read the book, and that's really valuable to me. So it's worth it. Like reading books is worth it if you read the right type of books, and that's what we hope to provide to everyone is those types of recommendations and to read along with you and learn with you. So that's retention and like actually learning the things is one thing that I have really come to love about books that I didn't even realize when we started.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Another interesting thing that you bring up TikTok and Instagram Reels and things like that, like these short form, quick money, you know, give me the info as quick as possible, and then let me see someone playing Subway Surfers. It's
Yep.
that
Maybe we should put that
medium.
in our podcast, just to keep
Yeah, we
people.
should put that on the side. You, me, and Subway Surfers. But you lose learning or the opportunity to learn from someone who's just really unique, really brilliant. And there's a lot of amazing people online, but um, these books are an opportunity to learn some of life's greatest lessons, some of the most magnificent. Um, I'm trying to find the word. I mean, these books have been sweated over. They've been like really tons of effort has been put into these books by some of the world's greatest people, some of the smartest people, the most wise, the most in tune, or at least in that subject, they're very knowledgeable. And I think you lose that when you turn to short form. You turn to that instant gratification. You lose learning some of the most meaningful things from these brilliant people. So again, books are such a unique opportunity to learn almost face to face, it feels like, with Matthew Walker's, with Chris Voss's, with Scott Harrison's, right? These people who are brilliant in their field, and they've contained their stories and their knowledge in these documents. And it's just up to us to be willing to access that, It's special. And just to be in the mind of someone like that, to get into how do they communicate this value? How do they explain things? That just changes how you digest it, how you retain it. So it's really
Yeah.
awesome.
Hey, and if that's not enough to sell you the idea of reading books yet, it's flexible. It's a very
Yeah.
flexible way to consume information. It's flexible based on how you prefer to actually read. If you want to read in a binge style where you sit down and read the whole thing, great. If you read more piecemeal, like a little bit here, a little bit there, you could start and stop. And heck, you could even listen to it. Audiobooks are everywhere. They're so accessible. I remember having to go to the library for audiobooks when I was a kid and like put a little tape in the tape player. And that was like the only way to get an audiobook. But now like Audible and all these other platforms exist. So like I was reading a different book the other day and I was like, yeah, I'm kind of sick of reading with my eyeballs. So I'm just going to get the audiobook and listen to it and still got a
Absolutely.
ton out of it. So all of that combines to hopefully convince you a little bit if you aren't already that there's real value in books, and that's what we hope to give you in Cardinal Corner is like a fast pass or a sneak peek into these books. Because a lot of what prompted this conversation today was I found this article on medium.com, and it's titled "The Way You Read Books Says a Lot About Your Intelligence. Find out why." I'm not a huge fan of the title and what that's like kind of saying to you there,
Yeah.
but it had some really interesting topics in there. He talks about this idea of like fractal reading where you don't even need to finish a book to get the best parts, which I'm like, wow, that aligns very well with what we talk about in Cardinal Corner. He goes even as far to say like just read the reviews and then read like the first and the last chapter and you'll probably get the gist of it. And kind of what it made me think about, and I want to get your thoughts on this as well, Robert. Like, how do you, when you're reading a book, how do you determine whether to like dive deep with it and just really try and soak in every page, or with nonfiction books, when do you feel is like the best time to maybe take a step up in the depth and skim, or
Hmm.
read the chapter heading and then decide if you even want to read that chapter or skip on to the next one? Like, how do you
Yeah.
how do you personally do that? How do you navigate your learning?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think first I always give a book a chance. You got to give it a chance. You got to give it a chapter or two or three. For instance, Thirst, it starts a little slow, and he starts telling his life story. And so these first couple chapters may not feel very applicable, but later on you start to discover, wow, that actually has a lot of meaning, and that story in the beginning of how his mom is struggling to find clean water that she can drink without being sick becomes a commentary and a reflection of his purpose later in life, where he's trying to
Yeah,
give water to people that won't make them sick, right? So,
it's
like,
beautiful context that you would miss out on.
absolutely. So, give a book a chance as my first rule. But when you're cruising through a book and you are starting to get ground and you're starting to feel the momentum of the book and develop into it, that's when I uh, am more flexible with the chapter headings, things like that. Now, a good example is Why We Sleep, right? So I read, 3/4 of the book, but near the end, I started reading the chapter headings and thinking, okay, I'll read the summary on this one because I am struggling to keep up and I'm struggling to stay on time, and so I prefer to get the information than just skipping it entirely. So I'll just go read like a summary of the chapter, or even switch to Audible or switch to an audiobook version and just kind of listen to it in the background. So um, again, give my role is just give the book a chance to begin with, and then as you're starting to uh, read the book, determine if it's applicable to you personally. Like if it's applicable to you personally, you should read it. If it's not quite as applicable, like some of the chapters in Why We Sleep for me, then I moved on. So, but what about you? Tell me what your strategy is.
Mine's very similar, and I think a lot of it I've had to come to terms with that it's okay to skip things. I found that I'm naturally a little bit of a completionist when it comes to books. Um, but like mentally, I realized that it's okay to not finish a book. And in fact, that was one of the things I liked about this article I mentioned before. The guy that wrote it, his name is Michael Simmons. Seems like it's a pretty popular article about reading and stuff. But he had this one section where he was talking about like the unread books, basically, and how every unread book or every book that you started and didn't finish is just, as long as you realize that that's like, first of all, that's fine, that's okay, but that's also just evidence that you're still learning, right? It's almost
Mm-hmm.
like a mark that I still have learning to do. And so if you have 20 unread books, that just means that you are just constantly doing your best to keep learning. And if you jumped from one to the other, that just means that you found something that was better for what you needed at that time. And so I like to do a mix now, is what I've noticed, of like we'll have the Cardinal Corner book that we're reading together, but I'll also have a couple other that I'm reading very slowly on the side, or maybe one that I start, and then like you said, I learn the author, I learn their voice and what they're trying to get at, and then you kind of get a feel for, is this going to be worth my time, or is it going to be better for my time to just read a summary or look up that author's like social media and just see if they kind of talk about that same thing in a different format that's
Yeah,
more applicable to me. So there's so many options, and one of I think our goals with this podcast and with the community that we're trying to build is to remove that stigma from reading. We don't ever want it to feel like a completionist, like you have to complete the books or else you're not on the squad, like you're not you're not cool enough
yeah.
to be part of the club,
You
or
lose your license.
yeah, you won't lose your reading license if you don't finish the book here. And so that's
Yeah,
why when we say like reading's optional, because you can read as much or as little as is useful to you. But our only expectation is that you try, you give it a fair shot, and if the best thing for you from a particular book is to read the summary and then a couple reviews and then move on, great. Sounds good to us, right? As long as you listen to the podcast as well. That's our only only rule. No, I'm
yeah,
just kidding. But the podcast is meant to be like a concise way to like sum up some of that stuff. To cut through the fluff
absolutely.
maybe a little bit. Yeah.
You've brought up a great thought, and I think we'll talk about this a little bit more later. But what's the purpose of us reading the book? It's not to just read the book. It's not to say we've read the book. It's to learn and grow in ways that we wouldn't have if we hadn't read the book, right? And so the moment we lose that, why are we reading? Why are we reading the book if it's not helping us? And there's absolutely arguments for discipline and for, completing a goal and things like that. And if that's what you want, like for me, I want to be able to finish a book because I'm trying to learn discipline. But for other people, they don't give a crap, right? And more power to them. So the moment that they're not learning, get out of there. Go read something really applicable and really meaningful for you. Which is also why we keep up our posts and our blog posts and our summaries about books we've already read. Because what if there's someone who's like, I love learning about compassion, but I joined a little late and I missed the one about sleep and I'm struggling with sleep. Hey, go back, read that book, become invested in it, and watch our videos on the subject and listen to the podcast and kind of digest those really important life lessons for you. And congratulations, that's the purpose of the book. That's the purpose of the club is, again, learn, grow. The moment you lose that purpose or it's not being fulfilled, then something should change. So
Yeah, I love that. And we should add just a little asterisk here, right? We're talking about nonfiction books.
yeah,
Do you remember that? I think we mentioned it before on the podcast already, but the comment where it was like, "What about Harry Potter?"
yeah,
But I mean, we're talking about nonfiction. We're talking about, you could call them self improvement, self help. You could
sure,
call them even like a memoir,
inspiration,
like Thirst. Thirst is a memoir,
yeah,
and but it's nonfiction with the point of us trying to learn something. So obviously, reading for fun is great. Same thing as watching a movie or a TV show.
right,
It like we love that stuff too, but just so people don't get confused, right?
absolutely. Nope,
It's
that's
like,
smart.
hey, if you didn't learn something from chapter one of Harry Potter, like loser, you're a loser.
Yeah. This is a really short, quick side note, but I've been totally humbled. Um, and I've really started to appreciate art and creation just for the sake of fun.
Yeah,
It's like, hey, I just want to have a fun time.
yeah.
And like it's specifically with movies. There's a lot of movies where the critics are like, "This movie sucks. Like, I didn't cry by the end. Why did I even watch it?" And I'm
And
like,
it's
you
like the
know
Mario
what?
movie. It's
Yeah, it's the Mario movie. I'm like, you know what? It was a fun time, and I giggled, and and I saw this little plumber jumping around punching stuff, and like that's fun. And sure, I didn't cry, and I didn't learn some really moving thing, but I
yeah,
had a fun
that's
time.
okay.
Yeah.
That's
So
fine.
so if that's your experience, listeners, heck, that's a win too. If you're entertained, if you have a fun time, that's a win.
Yeah, but I think I mean, that's a perfect segue even to talking just about books for learning as opposed to other mediums, right? Like,
Mm,
there's so much out there. You can learn from the internet. That's a big one. You could learn from a newspaper. You could learn from a TV show. You could learn from a movie, even that's meant to teach. Um, but what we were just talking about a little bit ago, is how the internet is like risky business sometimes when it comes to if you're really genuinely trying to learn something to like improve your life or change your life. It can be risky if you're just googling stuff. And there's a little bit of irony here. Like, I understand that because like we're a podcast and we're like on the internet, so
yeah.
hey, it is what it is. But we try and back what we're talking about in these books that are a little bit more credible and a little bit more meaningful. And we were talking specifically about SEO because we're both marketing and internet guys. Like, we both have worked on and ran businesses that do internet marketing specifically. And if we've learned one thing, it's that like SEO, where for those who don't know, SEO is search engine optimization. It's basically where you try and fine tune your articles on your website so that they appear when people search particular things. And it is a science and it is an art in its own way, but it's also kind of terrible because if you're
Yeah.
actually trying to learn something, the articles that you're seeing when you search something online, likely, not always, but likely, it's just whoever had the most money to throw at that article to get some expert to fine tune it so that it is the one that shows up when you search something. So that's a very blanket statement. There's a lot of good stuff out there. I've learned a lot of great stuff from just Googling things. I think it's one of, honestly, the greatest blessings of living in the time that we have is that we actually do have access to a lot of good information at our fingertips. But you just got to be so careful, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
Yeah, I
what do you
mean,
think about that?
Well, I just when I worked at that SEO agency, I I Google searched differently after that because I was watching articles being made to answer questions, you know, uh, how do you start a t-shirt printing business, or just anything? What's the healthiest food for this, condition or whatever? And I'm watching professionals develop articles and push them not to help and not to answer the question, but to get their website and their product and their service in front of people more. And that's not to say again that the information is completely useless. I mean, Google is, they have a very complex algorithm that
They
ranks
they try to
value.
show you, they try to show
Yeah,
you, well, they say they try to show you what's best. But I
yeah. But it's just their purpose wasn't quite what I was hoping for. So, anyways, you just have to be careful with the internet and how you're downloading information and accepting it or rejecting it. So, but books are great because you can first of all, it's very comprehensive. It's a really comprehensive document, but also you can get to know the author really well, figure out what their credentials are, their names on the book. Go look at them. Go figure out who they are. For an internet article, you're not going to probably see the SEO manager or the SEO specialist that commissioned that article and edited it. You may, but it's not going to be as reliable as looking up the Matthew Walker. I mean, he's got tons of authority on the subject. He's got
lots of
lots of
credentials.
documentation. Yeah, great credentials. So that's just another bonus for reading a book.
Yeah, I love that. And just with that too, like think about Matthew Walker, any of these authors that we've read, their book is a labor of love, like you said before. There was significant time and effort put into writing a book, and the amount of hands in that project is way less than a TV production or than a movie or even than an article online. You're completely right that there's a good chance that that article you're reading has had 7 to 10 different people working on it, and none of them could be experts on what you're reading, but they are experts in writing and in SEO.
SEO. Yeah.
So books seem to be a little bit more authentic. They're independently motivated. They're um, they create a higher barrier of entry to like put that information out there. It's
Yep.
so easy to post a post on social media or to post a blog. It's a lot harder to get a book published, and so you have to really care about what you're writing. That doesn't mean that everything that's written in a book is perfect and correct and good,
Yeah.
but in general, what we found is if you spend the time and pick the right kind of stuff that you're reading, it really pays off. It's more significant.
Yeah.
So
One
just I'll
last.
go for it.
Sorry, I'm just gonna put one last plug in for books before we move
Yeah,
on.
yeah,
Um, Dang, they're accessible nowadays. I
totally.
mean, if you don't like reading a paperback book, get it on a Kindle.
Yeah,
Get it on
that's
an
that's
ebook.
my life. This bookshelf
Right.
behind me is a lie. Like all of these are my wife's books. I read all of my books on an e-reader just
Right.
because it's just I love it. So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, what were you
And
saying?
and if you don't like ebooks, listen to it.
Oh
I
yeah,
use Audible. I mean, I don't read anymore, like paper words and things like that. I listen to it because I've just discovered that I digest information easier that way. And if you can't pay for it on Audible, go to the dang library,
yep,
right? And libraries now have apps, and Libby, for example, is
yeah, that's a
like there's
huge one.
so many apps, so many resources to find books, listen to them, read them, pay, don't pay, rent, whatever. Like there's so many ways. It's not behind a paywall, like a course or, there's just so many ways to access this incredible information nowadays. So another huge plus for books.
And you get to do it all at your own speed for what you want.
Heck yeah.
No one's over your shoulder. It's great. I love it so much. I've learned to love it so much. I honestly 3 years ago wasn't really into reading at all, but I've really have come to love it. It's really changed the way that I learn. But yeah, just to kind of like wrap up our thoughts on this topic, let's talk about what our goal is with Cardinal Corner. Like both what is our philosophy on reading, just to sum it up, but as well as like what are we trying to do with this show and with our efforts, like, to help people who either are readers or aren't to get where we hope that they can go. Like, what would you start us out on that?
I'll list a couple things real quick,
Yeah.
because there's a few that I think are really important. First is make the information within these books accessible to non-readers. It's like, I mean, I don't like reading, so this amazing information within Why We Sleep was not accessible to me, right? However, I listen to the podcast and I listen to the recaps and I listen to the, social media posts. I'm starting to digest some of the information. It's not going to be quite the same, but I'm still getting really valuable input and really valuable life lessons. So I think that's one thing. Um, and another thing is we are trying to encourage people who want to be readers, right? So yeah, if you're a non-reader, we got you. But if you want to be a reader, we got you as well,
Yep.
and we'll provide a system of accountability. We're right there with you. We're trying to read with you. We're developing with you. We'll hold your hand, more for us as well as you. You're not alone there. We want someone to hold our hand as well. And so, yeah, just an encouragement and, yeah, just developing a system of support is what I'm trying to say for people who want to be readers. So again, non-readers are invited, and people who want to be readers or who feel like they're failures, like, oh, I just am not good at reading, or I just get distracted easily. It's like, all right, we can work with that. We can still learn, we can still develop from books, even if we feel like it's not our forte. So
Yeah, I love that. And so, I mean, we just really want people to read in a way that benefits your personal, like, learning journey. If we're reading a book and it's very applicable, we would love it more than anything if you dove down deep with us, read the book all the way through, and got, just milked it for everything that it's worth. But if you're reading it and it's like, wow, this isn't super applicable to me, that's okay. Like, go back and read one of the other ones we recommended, or, go find your own for a while. But if later in life that comes up again, like, you can always come back. You can always come back and pick it up when you need it. So we would encourage everybody to dive deep when you can, when there is that depth. But if it's more of a skim type of a book, just skim. Just read the summary, read some reviews about it, see if it's even worth what you need. And then also, we feel that it's good to read without expectation. Don't read just to finish the book, to add another book on your books on the year completed list, or
your Goodreads list,
yeah,
yeah.
your Goodreads list. Hey, Goodreads is kind of the worst website anyway. It's terrible to use. But you know what I mean? Like, don't read for anybody else. Don't read for the author. They're not going to feel bad if you don't finish their book. They're never going to know. So do what you need to do. And then also, you and I had a good conversation about reading with, like, the humility to learn. That there is so much information out there that we can learn from. And so go into the book with an open mind, but also with your personal integrity, to know that every now and then you're going to run into a dud. You're going to run into some books that just full of garbage, not really what you're looking for, and that's okay. Stick to your guns, but also be humble enough to know that sometimes it's time to change something, or time to learn something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else to add there about our philosophy there with reading?
Well, I just love the point of view, like, uh remember the purpose.
Yeah.
Remember why we're reading. It's not for any other reason than to serve you. The book serves you. You do not serve the book. It's supposed to help you learn discipline, help you learn principles inside, help you grow, whatever you need. Right? It fulfills so many needs if you let it. So, it should never be a source of anxiety. It should never be a source of discouragement. I know for myself and a lot of people, like, we get discouraged and we feel, I mean, that article is hilarious talking about it. It almost gauges your intelligence, like
Yeah.
that's almost the vibe it feels
Like,
like,
how you
which,
read determines how smart you are.
right, which is, which I'm so glad is not true. Because if that were true, I mean, I would not be here talking today. It does not have any correlation with your value, as a human being, or your intelligence or anything like that. It's just to help. It's just to help us and to grow. And we want to take as much advantage of the opportunity as we can. We want to utilize this resource. Like Cardinal Corner is a celebration of this resource. Hey, let's all dissect the information, eat it up, share it with each other, save some leftovers in the fridge, and gobble this stuff up because it's free. Or we invest in ourselves, and we can become so much more. Anyways, love that principle. Reading is a powerful resource, and it's going to serve us if we let it.
Love that, man. Couldn't have said it any better myself. So I think that's
Thanks.
about going to do it for
Yeah.
this mini episode today. So thanks for listening to this mini episode of the Cardinal Corner podcast. If you enjoyed it, make sure that you throw us a follow wherever you're listening. We have the new book podcast coming out. It'll probably be in 2 weeks. We'll talk about Thirst, and we're very excited for that. Both you and
Heck
I have
yeah.
had an amazing experience with this book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody
Never
that I've
cried
talked
so
to about
much.
this book, oh yeah, everybody that I talked to about this book, they're like, "Oh man, this is a good one."
Yeah.
So I feel like we're batting 100 with our book choices so far.
We've been lucky.
Maybe
We've
the
been
next one will
lucky.
be rough. We'll see. But in the meantime, make sure you check out all of the social media that we've got for little knowledge nuggets throughout your week. We're on TikTok, Instagram. We got our Discord community. So just find us and come participate. We'd love to meet you. So yeah, that's gonna do it. Always remember that we freaking love you.